Welcome to the More Than Fitness podcast.
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Minisode number 131. Real quick for you guys on the video podcast, excuse the mess going on behind me. My little sister got an internship here in New York City, so she's currently staying with me right now, and her shit is everywhere. So that's the deal with that. The second thing, I told you guys I need to do this more often. If you guys enjoy the show, please rate, review, subscribe. It really helps me get, what is it called? Go up in the ranks on Apple Podcasts, and it distributes it out. It shows it to more people, the algorithm, all that kind of fun stuff. And basically, I just want to build this and build this community with you guys and other people like us. And the best way to do that is to get the word out there by you guys sharing it on your Instagram story, telling your friends about it, rate, reviewing, subscribing, leave a comment on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube as well, all that shit, right? So there's the quick promotion in the very beginning that I gotta keep doing it just because it does remind you guys, and it helps me out, and in turn helps you guys out as well. Okay, excuse me. I'm burping on the podcast. Good start. Okay, so this minisode is going to be how to set up a successful 12-week fat loss plan. I'm going to give you guys all the goods. I've been doing this for like 4 or 5 years now. I've been doing it for a while, and so I kind of know the overall gist of how this stuff typically goes, how to set it up, how to execute, and how to make it actually doable, as opposed to just saying, hey, here's a meal plan for 12 weeks, best of luck, right? That's not how this goes. So let's go ahead and get into it, because there is some stuff we got to cover, quite a bit. Of course, there's stuff we got to cover. All right, so the goal. We have 12 weeks for a fat loss plan. So what should be the outcome goal? What's the end goal here, right? So of course it's fat loss, but how much? How much weight are we trying to lose? What's kind of the flagpole that we're aiming at? And so I think we need to have somewhat of an educated guess here. And typically what the research shows, a good rate of fat loss is going to be about 0.5 to 1% of your total body weight per week. Right? So you take the average of your weight for every single day, and then every single week you want to go down about 0.5 to 1% of your total body weight. For easy math, for most people, that's going to be about a pound per week. That makes it super simple. So that's what we're going to use. We're going to aim for about a pound per week. But the thing is, especially in the beginning part of the plan, whenever you're trying to figure stuff out, sometimes it's a little bit of trial and error. So what I would say is be conservative with your goal. So instead of saying, okay, let's lose 12 pounds in 12 weeks, I would say more like 8 to 10 is probably going to be a little bit more realistic. And if you have a really hectic schedule or something like that, you can probably maybe bump that down even lower. But that's still probably better than what you've been doing. So pick a conservative goal. We're going to go with the goal of losing 10 pounds in 12 weeks. So that's the goal. And then we have the rate at about a pound a week on average. So to make sure that the pound, because that's what you want to focus on, right? You want to focus on the weekly trends in your weight as opposed to day-to-day fluctuations. And so that's also why we take multiple weigh-ins per week as opposed to just one weigh-in per week, which some people recommend, but it's just like if you had certain food the day before, maybe you had a bunch of carbs, so you're holding a little bit of water, maybe you had a lot of sodium, more sodium than you normally do, maybe you drink alcohol, maybe you got poor sleep, maybe you're stressed out, whatever, and your weight fluctuated on that specific day that you took your weigh-in, and it was higher than normal, well, then it kind of gives you this false answer to what your quote-unquote true weight is. So then it's better to have more data. So I recommend with the clients that I work with at least 4 times per week. That's going to give us a good average of what your quote unquote true weight probably is. So weigh yourself in the morning, after you use the restroom, before you eat any food, and that's going to be your weight for the day. Then you take the average on a weekly basis. Okay, So with that, let's start with weeks 1 and 2. And this is going to be where you just determine your baseline, right? Because we all know calorie deficit, that's what's going to facilitate fat loss. And so we have to figure out, okay, how do we get into a calorie deficit, right? How do we make sure that we're burning more calories than we're consuming on a regular basis to make sure that we're losing fat? So that's what these first 2 weeks are. And it's going to be a lot of trial and error. Like I said, you're just kind of trying things out, seeing what happens, and then adjusting from there as you go on. And this period typically takes about 1 to 2 weeks to really get that down. And so there's going to be 3 different ways to figure out your baseline intake, to find your calorie maintenance. So then we can figure out your calorie deficit. Remember, calorie maintenance is just how much food you need to eat each day to maintain your weight on a regular basis, right? So to figure that baseline out, the least accurate and reliable way, but it still could work just as a general guess, and it's also the easiest one to calculate, is just using a formula of taking your body weight and multiplying it by 12. That's basically it. And then you eat that amount of calories per day. And then that has been, with some people, can have some success as far as setting you up with a calorie deficit. So let's say you use that, you take your weight, you multiply it by 12, and then you do that for the next week, and you notice that your weight is trending downward. Well, then you're probably onto something. You're probably doing okay. If it's dropping by a ton and you find yourself super hungry all the time, well, maybe you want to bump that up. Maybe go with your body weight times 13, right? Something like that. So that's the first way. The second way is going to be a little bit more accurate. And these are all going to be guesses for the most part still. That's why we have the trial and error part of 1 to 2 weeks. And this is the most difficult part, honestly, for the most part going forward. You got to figure this out, but whenever you figure this out, then it's somewhat smooth sailing. Then you just kind of have to do it, right? But the second way is going to be a calorie calculator. And I think that the best way, one of the best ones that I've found, has just been Mike's Macros. So my boy, Mike Vacanti, friend, developed an app called Mike's Macros, and you can just put in your stats and put in your information, and then it spits out a calorie amount that you can eat on training days and rest days. And honestly, you can either follow that, or you can kind of meet in the middle. And again, you do that for the first 1 to 2 weeks, see what happens with your weight, and then you adjust from there. All right. And the third, and I think the most accurate way, and how I do it with all of my one-to-one coaching clients, is actually eating like you normally do pre-diet, right? So just like on a day-to-day basis, you're going to eat like you normally do, and then we're going to track that for at least a week or 2. And we don't want to change anything. We just want you to go about your normal day, eat how you normally do, exercise like you normally do, and then we can monitor your weight and see what happens there. Because for the most part, we tend to, even if you're not tracking your food, we tend to eat about the same on a regular basis. Our body has these mechanisms in place with hunger and satiation and things to make sure that we mostly maintain our weight on a regular basis. So I actually made an article about this. I've also made a Minisode about this if you want to go back and listen to that. I think it's like 6 steps to set up the 6 steps to set up a calorie deficit or something like that. I made an article about it. It's too long to go into with this, but I do think that it is the most reliable and accurate way to go about things. So you can click the link in the description. I'll put that article in there for you guys if you want to check that out. Okay. And then so after that, after weeks 1 and 2 are over, after the trial and error is done, then you have weeks 3 through 6. And then this is just going to be hitting your calories, hitting your macros, getting in enough protein, being in a calorie deficit for that period of time, and then hopefully losing around that 1 pound per week. And so it's pretty basic. Weeks 3 through 6, you're in the calorie deficit. But then in week 7, that's whenever we want to consider maybe taking a diet break. So maybe you have a vacation coming up. Maybe you have some type of big event or a wedding or something, and it happens to work out that in week 7, you're going to take a diet break. And what I mean by a diet break is you're just going back up to maintenance. right? And maybe you're not, maybe you're a little bit looser with your tracking. You're not as strict. You just give yourself a little bit of a mental break so that in week 8, you can then continue on the diet again. And what this does, and what I've tell my clients with this, is it gives an incentive so that you're not just like, okay, I'm dieting indefinitely. Whenever I say, okay, we're going to diet for the next 6 weeks, but then in week 7, you're going to get a break. Well, then psychologically, it's a little bit of relief. So that's really helpful. So give yourself about a halfway point, give yourself a little bit of a diet break, whether it's a couple days, whether it's even just one big meal, whether it's a week, whatever. Give yourself a little bit of a psychological break so that you can continue moving forward. Okay, then after that, you go back into the calorie deficit for weeks 8 through 12, continue to see progress, hopefully losing about a pound per week. And then that's basically it, right? Ideally within that period of time, so weeks 1 through 6, whenever you're in the calorie deficit, or at least trying to figure out the calorie deficit, you're losing about a pound per week. Week 7, you have a diet break. Weeks 8 through 12, you're back into the calorie deficit, losing pounds each week. And then after that, I would then consider another diet break as well. And typically, if you're doing a 12-week cut, maybe you have a vacation at the end, and that kind of takes care of that as far as the diet break goes. Then you can just kind of let loose, relax a little bit, and then you can either continue cutting after that, or you can go back up to maintenance and somewhat relax and go back to quote unquote like normal eating and transition out of the fat loss phase. All right, so I know that was quite a bit. Tried to jam it in there. If I talk quick, tried to explain everything, but I hope that gives you the general gist. I know that it's not super in depth. Of course, if you want that, you got to pay for the good shit. If you would like to work with me and have me basically tell you how to do all of these things and walk you through everything, plus a lot more, you can always apply for one-to-one coaching with me. There is a link in the description to do that. But if you want to try this on your own, take out a pad and pen, re-listen to it, write things down, check out the article in the description, and that should set you off on the right foot. Okay, how to set up a successful 12-week fat loss plan. There you go. Thank you guys, as always, for listening and for watching. See ya.